What is going on, everyone? It's that time of the year. Happy New Year. Uh, we got to do a God tier list. It's been a long time since I've done one of these. A lot has changed. I think that the actual balance in Retold is really, really good at the moment. And like 90% of games are basically won or lost based on like player skill. That being said, some things are without question easier than other things. I might get into that later on into this tier list. This is going to be a really detailed tier list. I had a little go at this before and I looked over and I saw that I had like an hour already recorded and I was like, man, I'm probably waffling a lot. So what I want to try and do is be somewhat succinct, give you my opinions, and effectively take you through this tier list. Now, in the past, I've been making these tier lists as like the definitive, this is the best gods and stuff. I don't like, to be honest, whenever you ever see a tier list from a pro player in an RTS game, what they're really telling you is their best gods. So it might not be it might not be the actual best god, but it's just like for them, their best god, the gods that they prefer to play. So this is going to be my take on it. So hopefully you guys enjoy that. You guys can take what I say and apply it to your games and have success, or maybe fail if what I'm saying is wrong. But what I do want to say first and foremost is if you want to see what the win rates are and you can make your own little bit of an evaluation as to what that fits for your own elo, you can do that very simply. So we've got over here, we've got the AoM stats here, and it's got a whole bunch of the win rates, and you can just go through here and see where everything's sitting. Now, this is the 0 to 1200 rating, where I think you will get the most easy to win with gods sitting up towards the top, and the more challenging gods to win with down the bottom. Now, I could explain away these win rates really, really simply just by the simple fact that these gods, they've got the power inside of them. They're just more challenging to extract it out. And if we jump over here, we get to the next rating range, 1250 to 2500. A lot less games played in this range. It doesn't affect a lot of people. And still, it's quite close. And you can see that some things have stayed similar here, as Tsukiyomi is sitting at the top for both of these ranges. We can even jump this even further up to say to this range here, and you can see certain gods do fall down a lot. You got Kronos falling down to below 50% as you get up to the very high levels. But like I said, like you can use this if you want for your own like ideas of God's strength. I don't think that there's a whole lot of serious knowledge to take away from this, other than the god is just maybe a little bit easier to play. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually stronger. It just means that it's easier to play. So you can take that however you want to take it. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to go through my list. I'm going to talk about the matchups, what I enjoy about the matchups, and all the other good stuff that comes in. So we're going to start with Zeus. And basically my tier list is going to be spread into groups of 50. So we're going to have at the top is a 950 to 1000 rating, which is the S tier. And then it's going to obviously be the 950 to 900 and then et cetera, et cetera. So Zeus for me is sitting at a 920 power level here. The way that I do this is I go through each matchup. I give them a score based on what I prefer to play in that matchup. Do I prefer to play Zeus or do I prefer to play Hades? I prefer to play Zeus 55 to 45. So Zeus gets 55 and Hades would get 45 there. So that's where I come up with my my tier list. I try to be somewhat objective about it, but it is literally all preference. So why do I prefer Zeus versus Hades? And we're going to do this for everything. So the big reason why I prefer Zeus over Hades is the Centaur. I think the Centaur is really, really strong in this matchup. It's fallen out of fashion for some reason. I don't really know why. It's really, really good. The Hades players will struggle versus this. There's also options of playing for Athena and trying to match the Hades, but it doesn't really make sense unless it's a really closed map. If it's a really closed map, I might prefer to play Hades a little bit more because you can wall up, play really slowly, get to your Mythic Age, and once you get to Mythic Age, you can have that Perseus out to deal with the Myth Unit spammage. That being said, there's also going to be lots of options for like Underworld ideas and and a whole bunch of things that Zeus can do. Zeus does have some advantages early on, which you can gain on top of the Hades and then just push them through to the end. So there's a lot here that Zeus has got on top of Hades. It's just a little bit inching that one out. Against Poseidon, I also think Zeus is a little bit easier to play. You got that Bolt for Atalanta early on, which gives you so much room to do whatever you want early on to the game. So, for example, the matchup, if you want to go this way, going Athena versus the Hermes of Poseidon, you can open up with Hippias and go Restoration, and you're just going to be playing defensive with that to open up with Hippias. And then you start mixing in the Hoplites when you've kind of locked up your base and everything is nice and safe. You can use Restoration to force out a ceasefire or just win a fight, get everything back up to full HP. It's fine. And then once you get to your hoplite mass, they're really, really strong. Of course, you've also got options of getting to the Mythic Age for Lightning Storm and your Bellerophon to kill off any sort of Myth unit mass if that ends up coming your way. So you're just going to play nice and defensive and get there, and it should be okay. So I do prefer Zeus in these matchups at the moment. If we come over now to the Egyptians against Ra, I really like the Egyptians. I think they're really strong. This matchup of Zeus versus Ra, I think is really equal. I don't mind playing either side of this matchup. There's not a massive, I don't feel like there's a massive power imbalance. I think some players would really struggle against the Sphinx because they've got like their own one-track mind on how to play this stuff, which maybe they're going to put the Ra a bit higher at some of their lists. But I think you've got the Centaur ideas to deal with any sort of Eclipse shenanigans. And then if they're not going to go for that, then you can save on the favor, not make too many Centaur, and you can start thinking about doing things like Hydra or just mass bronze, or you got all the ceasefires in the world. You can even go for multiple plenty vaults super early on. But the favor, getting that favor in preparation for myth unit spammage, and then defending with that is the bread and butter of Zeus, I think. And in fact, I think that this is somewhat similar to what the Mister is going for as well. He's always got that option there if he needs it. Against Isis and Set, this is maybe more on the bias side of things from not just my own experience, but also a lot of players like just constantly saying this. And it's probably worn me down a bit, and I'm really not sure at the moment. I've got at the moment a slight edge on Isis and Set for myself. Like if I see Zeus and I roll Zeus and I'm up against an Isis or I'm up against a Set, I'll probably be like, I probably prefer to play the other side of this matchup. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's unwinnable for Zeus. It's very close. So slight edge on the Isis and Set. I think the reason is mostly just if the Isis and Set player is incredibly high level, then they're going to be able to defend any of my sort of silly strategies that I enjoy doing. And I have to be a little bit more creative to break them. And if I'm not, then they're going to be able to figure out how to beat whatever I'm doing in that moment. But I've had a lot of success versus Isis and Set on the open maps with the Centaurs, even if people say that, so certain top players say that it's not very good. I've had a lot of success with it, so until that stops being successful, I think it's a very close one, but I'll give the Isis and Set an inch out, which is probably why Zeus is not in the S tier at the moment. Against Thor, I think this is a really close matchup. I call this one a 50-50. Part of the reason is I don't really want to go into myth units versus Thor because it allows him to go into his Hammer of Thunder Herser, which are incredible as a favor generation resource. So if I don't want him to be able to get that favor for free, so I have to play a different style, which basically means I got to go in for my restoration spamming type of Zeus, which I think that Thor, it's just a skill matchup. Who makes the better decisions, who micros better, and all that stuff. I don't see any significant advantage for either side. I just think it's nice and close, and anyone can win that one. Against Odin, I do feel like this one's a little bit better for Zeus. I can go for Centaur, I can go for Minotaur, and even if the Odin player is going to be pumping out those Herser, yeah, he's going to get a bunch of favor from it, but it's not nearly as much as Odin and Thor, and the Odin player doesn't have that troll or that dwarven gold mine to grab. At the moment, Odin's got Valkyrie, which, to be honest, they're not that good. They're just not that good anymore. They've been we can talk a bit more about Odin a little bit later, but basically he's been kicked in the teeth a couple of times, and the Norse Nerf Norse brigade has come through, and they've made this god quite challenging to play at the high levels. But this is still a close one. I would prefer to play Zeus, but I don't mind playing Odin in this matchup. So it's close. Against Loki, similar type of vibe. I think Loki might be slightly better in this matchup than Odin, simply because he's got the Forseti, which is really, really important. He's also got the stronger throwing axeman because he's got the bonus damage against other units, and he's got, actually, funnily enough, better rating cavalry, which I've never really thought of him as having better rating cavalry than Odin, especially because he doesn't have Freya. But the fact of the matter is, when it's important, he's got the stronger cavalry, which is on that second hunt. If you can't get to that second hunt, you can't defend that against the Zeus, then life becomes very, very, very tough for the Norse players. They really need that second hunt where Zeus is going to be super, super strong on. Next one here is Freya. I actually think this is a nice and close matchup. I think that the centaur angle and Hermes against Freya is Zeus's best bet. You can do restoration angles on certain maps that are more closed off, but I think that favors Freya slightly. So the closed off maps are going to favor the Freya player a little bit more. The open maps are going to favor Zeus a little bit more. But yeah, you got the ceasefire for things like Tempest, Ghoul and Bursty. Centaur are really good, but they are countered to some degree by Draugr. And of course, I can kill off the Draugr if I can get my Heracles onto them. He can do a lot of damage there. I can get my heroes out. The Godi are a great answer for Centaur because I can make Peltast and all that other good stuff. So it's very much an interesting matchup at the moment. I think I don't mind either side, but I also don't think that when I'm playing Freya, the Zeus players that I've played haven't really been trying these sort of ideas yet. So it might be that Zeus is just better than Freya at the moment, and they haven't really tried it, or it might be that the Freya players haven't quite worked out how to beat what I'm talking about with Zeus consistently. So I don't know. Next one is versus Kronos. I think Zeus is just hard countering Kronos. It's not even close. I don't think you can't Kronos rush Zeus. You can't really well, you can kind of go for a boom idea with Kronos versus Zeus, but this does play into a lot of what Zeus is strong with. So there's an idea with with Prometheus, so both Kronos and Uranus, which it basically, you spend all your favor on valors and you get yourself a big economy. The weakness to this is basically just getting pushed with a bunch of myth units because you don't have favor for the heroes to deal with them, and those are just going to be able to overwhelm you, especially with the restoration and things like that. So if the Zeus player reads that that's happening, then they can just go into a whole bunch of Minotaur and then rush you, and then life is going to get really tough. So there is a big weakness there. But if they don't, then the Kronos player can have some huge advantages there as well. So for example, one idea with Greek is just get to the late game, and then once you get to the late game, you kind of win against the Kronos, which will mean, well, let's just play defense. We'll grab a second town center and we'll just play defense, where that Prometheus play will have the ability to completely boulder through the 2TC play. So you can play like a 1TC Kronos and absolutely dominate the 2TC Zeus with like a Promethean, Mermillo, Terma type angle. There are some tricks there on this 2TC defense from the Zeus that you can use to actually survive that and find wins. So it's not like a guaranteed win, but it is a nice little strategy for Kronos players and Uranus players I like to try. Okay, against Uranus, I think Uranus has got the edge on Zeus. Partly because he's got Oceanus, so you don't have that angle of going for like lots of myth units, which is what Zeus is good at. He gets the one cheaper population. People looked at that originally and thought it wasn't that strong for Zeus, but I think it's just it basically just means that Zeus's death balls are so much stronger because they get an extra. They just get extra population. Like if I've got 15 myth units out, that's like I've got 15 extra population. That's kind of wild when you think about it. Like if I play Isis, I get 5 population for a town center, right? All of a sudden, like Zeus is on 1 TC, but he's sitting actually at 2 TCs worth of population because of his myth units. So there's that angle there. But Uranus shuts that down because of Oceanus, and same with Gaia as well. But I think Gaia's a little bit closer. in the matchup. I don't really mind playing either side of that one, but I do prefer to play the Uranus side in this matchup. So Oceanus has got the hero Murmillos. She's got Bite of the Shark. Caladria as well, really, really strong. Caladria do get sniped by the centaurs, so you do have to be careful with that and be very well aware that you can't dodge the centaur special ability. So when I'm not sure what the number is, it might be 3 centaur, it might be 4. I can't remember, but when there's that many, you can just focus down the Caladria. So the Caladria have to be sitting behind the army at all times and be playing very, very smart. The other thing that Uranus has got over Zeus is oftentimes Zeus is looking for a big power spike. I can just run from that. I can sack the area, take everything out through the sky passage, go onto the other side of the map, and you go, oh, well, my power spike is over. Uranus comes back, wins the fight, and wins the game. So yeah, there's a lot of very, very nice tricks for Uranus, and I do prefer that one. Yeah, Gaia as well. I think this is equal. I don't mind either side. I've had some success with Zeus. I've had some success with Gaia. I've had some fails with both. It seems like it's totally fine on both sides. But anyways, Fushi, I prefer to play the Fushi side of things here. Najar is a incredible tool for the early game versus Zeus. He can solo the Heracles. He can raid. He can kill off my myth units really easily. He's also got the stronger pioneers, which are really good to deal with the myth units. Then on top of this, if you want to go in for hoplites, I've got Fire Archer. If you want to go in for Hippias, I've got Halberdier. If you want to go in for, what are they? Toxotes, I've got Javelineer. The only time when the Zeus army starts looking very, very scary is in the heroic age with the Peltas coming through. But even then, Fushi can then deal with that with some really nice mythic age timings as well. So getting in for the dragons and using those, you got the big flood, and Peach Blossom Spring can help you get there. So I do prefer the Fushi in this one. With Noir, it's a little bit less painful, and I think I don't mind either side of this one. It's pretty close. Zeus has got a lot of like interesting hoplite raiding ideas versus Najar, which of course you can do this versus Fushi, but Najar, but without the Najar, like you don't have any real threats to your myth units, so you can actually build them a little bit. You've also got angles of getting to the heroic age Peltas plus myth unit, take down all the pioneers, and then what does Noir do? He has to get out the sages and the Jiangxia as well. But yeah, I think this one's kind of interesting. It's kind of like a fun matchup on both sides. I don't mind it. And you can play some really nice defensive ideas with Noir as well. And that can work. But yeah. And then Shenong, I prefer to play Shenong in this matchup as well. The reason why Shenong here is I don't really have access to Hippias, so I can't really sit in the classical age. So that Chiao is so good here on the open maps, and if it's a closed map, you can just go for the Earth Wall and play a nice defensive boomy game similar to what Noir would be able to do. But you've got the stronger late game for Shenong with the ridiculous Dows and things like that with Huang Di. And then finally the Japanese, I just prefer playing Zeus against all the Japanese. Tsukiyomi, Susanoo, and Amaterasu. Main reason is I can go for a myth unit centric game plan, and that forces them into Bushi early on, and the Bushi just mean I've got all the play, right? So they sit there trying to deny my raids. They have to get their walls up. They have to play really, really slowly. They can't go into their samurai because my centaur are going to dominate them. They might try for cav, but I can obviously defend my base and pick off their cav when they come in and attack me. And I can defend them. Of course, Sashimono Bannerman do kind of beat out my Hippias, but I've also got Spirited Charge and Thracian Horses, and I can go into Prodromus as well once I get to the heroic age, so that I can deal with those. It does, even versus Tsukiyomi, who I think is incredibly strong right now, I think that Zeus is the god I prefer to play at the moment. But that could just be lack of knowledge with that Tsukiyomi, lack of game experience and things like that. But that's where I'm at. Okay, so that's Zeus. So we are currently at nearly 20 minutes, and I've only done one god. So if you've gotten to this moment now and you're going, what the hell? Where do I see this? Just skip to the end if you don't want to listen, and then come back a little bit later, put it onto the side while you're doing some dishes and have a listen. Alrighty. So we're up to our next god, which is Hades. I've got Hades sitting at an 860 power point here. So this is the 950, this is the 900, this is the 850. So you are sitting in the B tier, right? 900, 850. Yeah, you're in the B tier with Hades. So we've already talked about Zeus, so we're just gonna keep going along. So Hades versus Poseidon. I would prefer to play Poseidon in this matchup, simply because those Centaur are really, really tough to deal with. If it's a closed map, I think Hades has probably got an edge, but a lot of the maps are quite open. So yeah, it's kind of just on average, I would prefer to play Poseidon. If it's a closed map, I prefer to play Hades. So, I mean, I have to average it out somehow. I could say it's a 50-50, but that doesn't really tell the story, does it? All right. Versus Ra, I don't mind playing Hades. I think it's really good. You're basically just playing defense to try and hold on, and then you win the late game. Ra's timing attacks are okay. The Petsukos sort of ideas are really, really strong, but Hades can get to the Mythic Age against those sort of Petsukos ideas pretty quickly, and then get Perseus out. He's also got the Chiron, who's nice. You can sort of dodge any of the arrow fire. I think he's okay versus Ra. I don't see any big problems, which just means it's a skill matchup as to whether or not the Ra can get the damage done or Hades defends or whatever. Versus Isis and Set, I do think that this is winnable for the Hades, and we do see this quite a lot at the top level from some of the really, really strong Hades players. But when those Hades players do go up against other really, really strong Isis and Set players, I feel like they struggle a little bit. And personally, I prefer to play Isis and Set in this matchup and be in the driver's seat, where I can dictate whether or not I win or lose the game based on my decisions with my army and my timings. And those timings are very, very tough to defend for the Hades player. That's why I prefer to play the Isis and Set. You've got Anubite raids, which don't really work, though people keep trying it, and that's why it's sort of not working. But realistically, we can just say we'll get out a couple of units, defend against any sort of Achilles sort of shenanigans, or just wall up our base, or be hunting underneath our town center and take no damage, get to the heroic age really, really quickly, and then we can start looking into siege tower pushes and things like that, which are, and Migdol spamming and things like that, which are really, really strong against Hades. All right, the next one's here. Against Thor, I think, and Odin, and Freya, I don't know if I like playing Hades. I think I prefer playing the Norse here, and that might be a little controversial because everyone's saying Norse is awful at the moment. I think the reason I like Thor, Odin, and, well, we'll talk about Freya afterwards, but the reason I like Thor and Odin here is mostly because the Freya aggressive angle. So we can lock the Hades player on one town center. We can burn their safe wood. He has to drop sentinels in, and then I'm basically in the driver's seat in this game, so long as I play it correctly. I feel like I'm in the driver's seat in this matchup, and it's going to be more about like my ability to outplay than just like some sort of other imbalance, right? Like I prefer to play the Norse here, just on that fact with Freya. So give that a try and see how that goes. Well, Loki doesn't have Freya, so he doesn't have the forest fire angle to open up the Hades base and make his life really miserable. The strong units for Loki, while he can make himself some raiding cavalry that are a little bit stronger to get to his second hunt, Hades doesn't care about that. He's not looking for like a Zeus type of push there. He can, but he's not looking for it. He can do a whole bunch of other things that can make Loki's life a living hell. And then on top of that, when the flaming weapons comes, you've got Underworld to run away. So there's a bit of a cancel out of the Loki power spike, which then puts the onus, gives the advantage back to Hades. So it's a close one, but I think, I think this one's very close. I don't really mind either side with the Loki. And Freya, I do prefer playing Freya in this matchup. Freya's been, like, of course, Norse has all been hit. I used to really prefer Freya in this matchup, but it's a little bit closer now. But yeah, I do prefer Freya. She's got just everything is on the Hades player to make something happen here, basically. If I can get value from my Gul and Bursty with Tempest, then I'm like way in front in this matchup. That's all I need to be getting is value from that way in front. If I don't get value from that and I cancel out, say, an Underworld or something, now we're close and I have to start outplaying really nicely. But I really like Freya here. Against Kronos, Hades is just winning. I don't see any real easy easy game for Kronos to have in this one. The Kronos Rush doesn't work because Ajax can come out of the town center whenever and defend. You've got Sentinels as well, so any follow-ups aren't going to work. So the best angle for Kronos is some sort of like fake rush into a town center, which is what Hades wants to play for anyways. Of course, you've got the Prometheus angle that I was talking about before, but I think that works even less against Hades than it does versus Zeus for many of the defensive reasons that Hades is so good. So yeah, I don't like Kronos in this matchup at all. Similar to Uranus versus Zeus, Uranus versus Hades, I think I prefer playing Uranus in this matchup. Maybe on the really closed off maps, then Hades has got the edge. But even in those matchups, if I can sneak my villagers with the Sky Passage into really, really nice positions, then we're in a really good spot with Uranus. So it's a bit of a tough one. I do prefer. I don't like playing Hades versus Uranus. I don't like playing this one at all. So I prefer to play the Uranus side. Gaia, again, this is quite close. There's some pretty nasty Contarius business that can come onto the Hades, and it makes you want to build Prodromus, but really you shouldn't. You should just be trying to wall up and trying to react with your hoplites because they're just a lot more of a versatile unit for your actual fighting comp. If you go for Prodromus to try and deal with those Contarius, and you're going to get into some spicy business there. But yeah, this one is also quite close. You just need to be playing very nice defense with Hades and you can find some wins, and Gaia needs to be playing some really nice offense and map control to find the wins, but it's close. Against Fuxi, Noir, and Shenong, I think this is actually one of the really close matchups. It might even be Hades favored here, but this is not from my experience, it's from what I've watched other players go for. And effectively, the game plan for Hades is to get that fortress up, make Petropolis, and start sieging. And it can be really tough for the Chinese Pantheon to actually defend this. That being said, I think this is like how do I say this? It's like a strategy which just needs to be unlocked on the Chinese side and understood that it's coming and be prepared to defend against it. And then I don't think that it's a problem anymore. I think this strategy caught a lot of Chinese players out, and once they realize that they have to be aware, like ready to defend it, then I don't think it's that strong. So I think, but even without that strategy, I still think this is a close one. So yeah. Anyways, then over onto the Japanese. I think the Amaterasu versus Hades matchup is quite close, but I might prefer to play it slightly on the Hades side because I already know. So the thing with the Japanese is, for the vast majority of the cast of the gods, you want to be the defender. You don't want to fight at all. You want to defend with buildings. You want to sit behind your buildings with your army. You don't want to fight at all. You want to get to the mythic age. You want to get your upgrades in, and then you want to take some fights after that when you're in the strongest point you can be. So if your god is good at that, then that's the play. So I think I do prefer to play Hades in this one, ever so slightly, but maybe it's close enough that Amaterasu is fine. There's a lot of power with Amaterasu's like sneaking those weasels in, getting some damage. She's also got Tengu as well, which I'm still surprised we haven't seen this type of angle from our Amaterasu players. But ideas of like, if the Hades player is going to play really defensive, we're just going to get a whole bunch of Miko out, get to our heroic age, and we're just going to make a bunch of Tengu jump over the walls, start killing villagers off. Tengu are great in a fight as well. Even when Perseus comes in, you can throw everything at it and still get a lot of value out of those bad boys, or you can just avoid the Perseus as well because you've got the speed advantage there. But yeah, you'll probably find the value before he comes in anyways. Tsukiyomi and Susanoo, I prefer to play the Tsukiyomi Susanoo side. We'll talk about Tsukiyomi here first. So basically, like I said, you're trying to defend, but Tsukiyomi hits so hard that if you don't have a safe second gold mine, I don't know. That's my thing is. So there are a lot of maps with safe second gold mines. So if I have a safe second gold mine, I'm just going to stick my fortress on there. I might even drop a second sentinels there, and I'm just going to try and get mythic age. Like, I'll sacrifice town centers and things. You probably even try for a village center as well as an idea if it's like a really garbage map and you can't go for the town centers for whatever reason. But yeah, I think I prefer the Tsukuyomi here just on the timing attack stuff. If the gold mines are out in the middle of the map, very, very tough. Susanoo as well. I prefer this god because if it's a closed map, I've got my my Oni sort of all in, which is really, really strong. And if it's an open map, I've got my Raiju, which are really, really strong. So either way, I'm going to be able to find a massive amount of damage with my power spike, and that's going to carry me through to a win versus the Hades. But it's still close. I think that you have to play really well with Susanoo to win. And I think that the Tsukuyomi, if you've got the game plan down, the Hades player has to play a really, really specific way. And if you can break that, then you can find the win there as well. Alrighty, we're up to Poseidon now. So I've got Poseidon, unfortunately, sitting down here in the C tier. You can see, look, great good representation. So we've already talked about the Greeks, so let's jump over onto the Egyptians. And similar to all the other ones, this is exactly the same. And it's the same for the same reasons. You do have centaur angles with Poseidon. You do have early Hippias attacks, which, if the Egyptian player isn't prepared, will struggle. To just tell you exactly how you're supposed to play this one with the Egyptians, you don't need a fast advance to defend against the fast advance from the Poseidon. You just need to be building your houses in the Archaic Age with multiple villages to lock off your gold mine and make sure that your food is nice and safe as well. That's it. So if you can do that, then we're playing a game. There's no early game advantage from the Poseidon player. The centaur angle is there, like I said. But Zeus is obviously better. Because of the population thing and the fact we're building up a ball of units that the opponent just can't deal with. Poseidon doesn't have that angle because it doesn't have the cheaper population. Does have the faster centaur though, so that can help you with some pressure. But you don't want to be risking your centaur's life. So I don't know. I do prefer Isis and Set in this one, and Ra is kind of equal. Against the Norse, Thor, I quite like versus Poseidon. You can't really go for your Dwarven Armory opening versus a really good Poseidon because you're going to be under a lot of pressure. And while you might be able to get out of it without losing any units, you're going to take so much idle time, and the Poseidon player is going to have all the momentum and they can take that to the bank. So I would actually prefer to play more of a standard opening here. Maybe go for a rush. There is a 4-minute advance time that's been going away. Thank you to Crag Hack for that one, which might be a fast enough advance time that you're not going to take. Excuse me. Excuse me. There might be a fast enough advance time. I haven't tried it. It's too much stuff to work out. But the fast advance from Thor is really good here. You can put pressure on if the Poseidon player decides to not go for the fast advance. You can defend their attacks if they do, and you can throw your armory down and get your armory upgrades in a little later. Find your advantage there. You can go Freya in this matchup as well and deal with the centaur nicely, and that's great. But yeah, if we move over to Odin, I think this is close. I think a lot of players have been like, yeah, this one's like nice and close here. Like Odin is good, Poseidon is good, normally a skill matchup. There's no like massive imbalances, I think, from either side in this one. So it's just get good trades and find the edge. Loki, I like Loki versus Poseidon because you can go in for you want to build the Herser. It's great. The same, I think this is kind of similar to like the Zeus angle as well, but there's no Minotaurs, there's no restoration to deal with, there's no underworld. There is a bronze that can be used, but am I saying I prefer Loki? No. Yes, I do prefer Loki. Hello, my brain is working. Fantastic. Yeah, so you can spy the centaur, so you can see where it's going. Herser. To take out the centaur. So long as you play a good game as Loki, you're in a good spot. But I think I prefer the Loki in this one. Though I have lost this matchup recently, but I think that was mostly on me rather than anything else, which is kind of like, it's true to the whole thing. It's like, it's more about the actual player than the god for the majority of these matchups. Freya here, I prefer playing Poseidon as well. You got the centaur ideas. Sorry, am I going crazy? Yeah, no, I prefer to play Freya in this matchup. Yeah, of course. I prefer Freya in everything. Nearly Freya is one of my favorite gods. Okay, so yeah, Freya here is just like, you just play defense and you sort of win. That's the idea. You might have to go into Draugr here if the Centaur mask comes through, so you have to keep that in the back of your mind. But there is the Atalanta to deal with those Draugr, which means you have to always be using walls to block that Atalanta from jumping onto your backline mid-fight. So yeah, there's that stuff. Against Kronos sucks versus Greek. I prefer Poseidon here. Same reason as before. I don't need to talk about it anymore. Uranus is really, really good versus Poseidon. Like, more so than versus Zeus and Hades, and I would rather play Poseidon here every single time. I think you have to go Ares as Poseidon in this matchup. And you are looking for a late game. So you're basically playing 2TC turtle type idea with Poseidon versus Uranus and just trying to hold on, which can work. But you go for Ares, so you get access to defensive Hypaspist, which basically will shut down any sort of early game attacks, but it does give the map control over to the Uranus, so you can put sky passages everywhere. And then we're just looking to kind of be very aware of where the army is going and be trying to match it. So we're using Pegasus to try and match where all that's going and all those good things. Problems arise with like Hyperion coming in, whole bunch of hero units. The reason you can't go Hermes here is because Oceanus, Uranus, you've got the Catapultes with Weightless Mace plus Empyrean Speed. They are zooming, and then you can heroize them as well. Hippias are just useless effectively versus that. And it's similar to Gaia. Gaia has got a same idea, but her Weightless Mace Catapultes go even faster on the Lush. So yeah, you have to play a different way there, I think, as Poseidon than the way that he wants to go. So do Ares, but I still think it's tough. Okay, so Fushi and Shinong, both of these gods versus Poseidon, really, really strong because of Master of Weaponry. That's the Halberdier tech, which slows the cav. I don't need to talk more about that, but I prefer playing both of those. Noir, I do not mind this matchup in the slightest, but I don't mind playing Poseidon here either. They're both cavalry gods, but Noir's come a little bit later. Noir's going to be going for that heroic age pretty quickly with the Earth Wall. Or you can go Genu and try and make that work. I like that angle a little bit better because it helps the economy for Noir. But I don't see any significant edge either way in this matchup. So yeah, I don't mind either side of this one. Similar to Zeus versus Amaterasu, I do prefer to play Poseidon here. I'm going to be going for Centaur. I'm going to be doing the same versus Tsukuyomi and Susanoo as well with Poseidon, but I think Tsukuyomi does a lot better at defending this sort of stuff. And same with Susanoo because of the Inari Orkami. So, yeah, basically, yeah. But you don't have... Maybe Poseidon is fine versus these gods as well. Maybe I'm wrong on this one. This was my gut feeling on this matchup, was I just prefer to play Tsukuyomi and Susanoo. I guess because... yeah, you don't want to go into hoplites. So the reason why Zeus is better here is because when Sashimono Bannerman comes in for those cav, you can go into hoplites for Zeus, but Poseidon doesn't want to do that, right? So he has to basically keep matching with his own cav, which you're going to be losing, and hope that his centaur are going to be able to make the difference, basically. He does have the speed edge over Zeus with his cav, so he doesn't actually have to take any fights, but he has to be able to take out the Kitsune, who are boosting up the speed of the Naginata riders. And like, even if you hold the early stuff or whatever, like all the timings hit, and then you're playing versus like Oni, Raiju, or Tengu coming in at you, and that can completely shut down a whole bunch of stuff as well. That being said, I think I might be even feeling like this is a 50-50 matchup for Poseidon, which would raise his stock up to the B tier if I was to stay with that. But I'm going to leave it at a 45-45 with the advantage for the Japanese kings of Tsukuyomi and Susanoo. Alrighty, we've done three gods here, and we are very much into the into the crazy times in this video. I hope you guys are enjoying. That being said, we have done a lot of matchups, so it's gonna go faster and faster. So stick with me. Now we're up to Ra. Ra here is sitting very much in front of Hades here in the B tier. Not an amazing god at the moment, but not terrible. I do like playing him. He's a lot of fun. He's got, I think he loses versus Isis. I think he's okay versus Set. Unfortunately, the reason why Set is kind of, I don't like Set in the mirror anymore, is because the Slinger got sort of nerfed but buffed in the same breath. So you can't really make slingers to take out chariot archers, which is what I want to be doing with Set. Doesn't work because they don't do enough damage anymore. The chariot archer is just an insane unit. Yeah, I think it's close. We've seen some very, very interesting games. The killing off Spearman, you kind of need to go for Petsukos. So whatever you're doing with Ra needs to go against Set, needs to go through Sobek. But yeah, against Isis, Isis has also got Sobek. Isis has got Prosperity. Isis has got more population. Isis has got God Power Protection. Isis also got Thoth as well. So if it goes for the fast mythic route, it's going to be Isis with all the advantage. If Ra can survive, then Ra wins because Ra's got the stronger Migdol units. But surviving is really tough versus Isis here with Ra. So good luck. Against the Thor and Freya, I got these ones at 50-50. I think it's actually a really, really fun matchup. I've seen people complaining about the like the Sphinx monument thing now that the priest is back onto the monuments. But I think this is like a very much skill-based matchup and being able to defend. Thor's got angles of dropping, getting heroic age and using a second dwarven mine, so he doesn't actually have to go to a second gold mine and then face the eclipse. He's also got frost to deal with that. So happy days. Just make sure you get to the heroic age before you leave your main, but before your gold mine runs out, and you're good to go. You've got watchtowers, use those, defend, play a nice game, and you're good to go against the Sphinx type ideas and against the Wadjet type ideas. I've had some really fun games here with Thor versus Egyptian. You can win a fight, I think, early on with Norse versus the Egyptian classical fight, but you can't win the game in the classical age. So keep that in the back of your mind. If you win a fight, take the advantage, maybe drop a town center, maybe go heroic age, something like that, and play for an advantage in the heroic age if you find one, right? That's my advice here for Norse. Okay, so Odin and Loki, I'm preferring Ra pretty heavily. I just don't think these gods have got much going for them in this Egyptian matchup against Ra. I don't really see what they should be doing. I've definitely won games here. I don't think the Egyptians are necessarily easy to play. I think that's the big challenge here. But they do overwhelm. You can go Wadgets versus the Odin and the Loki. You can go Sphinx here as well. It's an open map. You can also play for a defensive 2TC idea, which can be really strong. But yeah, there's a lot of things there. And Freya, he's got Draugr. Draugr are enough to like hold the Egyptian at bay with walls and things like that. And that's the angle you want from Freya. So you want to take somewhat of a nice early game fight without losing too much. And then you want to get your Draugr out and play defense with those until you're in a good spot, get your hill forts up and things like that. Against Kronos, I think Kronos has got an edge versus Ra. But I also... The more I play this matchup, the more I think Ra might just be better. But I've got Kronos as having an edge here, just on the fact that it's hard. It's really quite difficult, and you need to really practice it to defend all the early shenanigans and be prepared to play a sort of suboptimal archaic age versus your opponent going for an optimal archaic age, right? So you have, because you can't scout the Kronos Rush, right? If the Kronos Rush isn't coming, and we know that it's not coming, maybe there's like a score read or something you can do there on the Ra side. If you're like really into this, like figure out exactly what a Kronos Rush score looks like versus say a what's it called? something else. So basically, look at what the score looks like when a mana comes down versus it doesn't come down. That's what I'm trying to say. Or look what the score looks like when a temple comes down, at what time where the score changes, and maybe you can get that scouting information from there, and you can sort of decide, okay, we stay in the classical in the archaic age for an extra villager or two, and we're good to go. There's some options there, but yeah, you want to advance quickly here, and then you want to play from that position. I've had success in this matchup with Ra, and I do think there is an advantage to be had. I think he's got all the if he can get his Patsukos ball out and just keep them in a good position, the Kronos cannot do anything versus that, especially when you have shifting sands as well to play around chaos. But yeah, yeah, it's a tough. I'm not gonna. I don't think it's like an easy-ish matchup, and I prefer to play the Kronos side, but if I have to play the Ra side, it's winnable. Uranus, on the other hand, this one is a nightmare. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. I think, and we've seen this in like Champions League and stuff, like Uranus just runs Ra off the map. I don't even think I have to talk about it. We just saw it so much. Anyways, Gaia, this one feels a lot better than against Uranus. Uranus, like, Gaia doesn't have Chaos. Gaia doesn't have, Gaia doesn't have Hyperion. Gaia doesn't have Shockwave. And that's the big difference maker, I think. She does have, like, the Dryad angle, which can work. And she's got a pretty good late game. So I don't mind playing the matchup. It's just like, there's not, it's equalish, right? Like, I think she's also got the really strong catapulties as well, so you can't just go for like mass camel riders and expect it to work. You have to go for a very healthy mix of units. Maybe on the super open maps, the classical fight is still quite good for Egyptian, for Ra, but yeah, I think Gaia's actually okay there. Fushi, I like Fushi in this matchup. I like Shenong in this matchup, mostly for Chi Yao. I think it's really good against Ra. Just in general, you can't really classical fight and win these fights versus the classical fighting Chinese, because they've got the lightning weapons. You have to shifting sands away from it, or lose your dudes. So you have to go for a different angle, which means 2 TC sort of plays, which both of these gods can do fine in that. Nuwa, I think it's just equal. There's like economic god versus economic god, both gods hitting quite hard. Maybe Ra's got a timing edge over Nuwa. Maybe not. I don't know. But I don't mind either side of this matchup. And then against Amaterasu, I think I prefer Ra. You want to basically go for a couple of priests early on, and you want to be playing defense. That's it. So a couple of priests to deal with the weasels. You build your base in a way that the weasels can't enter your main gold mine. So you're going to build houses in like a circle to your actual town center. So there's no way in. So you got a temple, you got like an armory, you got houses going around. You can't get in there, and that's going to allow you to get your second town center, and you're going to be able to play defense from then. Migdol's spamming, and once you get your foothold on the map, then you're just good to go. And then we've got the Tsukuyomi and Susanoo. I think if you play really well with Ra, you might be able to hold. But I prefer to play Tsukuyomi and Susanoo because I don't want to be that guy who's trying to hold against the stuff that it's getting thrown at me. So yeah, both of these gods have got that timing that just hits really hard, whether it's with myth units from Susanoo or god powers from Susanoo, or it's the Tsukuyomi full bronze or full iron type ideas. Those are tough to hold. So I prefer that side. There's also the Tengu stuff still available for Tsukuyomi, which works versus Ra as well. So keep that in the back of your mind. Even though it was nerfed, it's still really strong. Okay, over here we've got Isis. I really like Isis. I think Isis is super strong still. And I think we saw this to some degree. This might be my bias as well. I know that a lot of people go, well, if you look at the stats of Champions League, Isis didn't do very well. I'm like, yeah, but you know, the gods that the Isis was mostly matching up against are other S tier gods. So often just skill difference, really. Isis versus Set, prefer Isis. Patsukos, really good. Prosperity, really good. There's also Ancestors Eclipse timings that are really strong. You can't really, like I said, you can't really go for full barracks units versus as set. You have to get into your chariot archers, and I think this favors Isis slightly. But I'll play both sides of the matchup, and it's okay. But yeah, slightly favors Isis. I think Isis is dominating the Thor. Partly because of monument protection, so there's no frost angles. If you get into a bind, you're gonna just lose. You can't just sit there and try and hold until you can deal with it. There's also Anubis angles, which are really strong versus Thor as well. Same for Odin, but this is worse for Odin because Odin doesn't have Forseti Hersa. So life gets even more tricky for the Odin. The Anubis angle is really strong. You've also got some offbeat strategies, which are really good, like going for Bast, going for Sphinx against Odin, similar to what Ra can do, but it's even better as Isis for many reasons, mostly prosperity. It's just an S triple plus tier god power for the extra gold. Anyways, over here we got the Loki as well, which I think this is similar to Thor. He's got Forseti, but he doesn't have access to Dwarven Mine like Thor does. So you're probably going to lose more games with Loki than you would with Thor. Plus Thor's got the early economy. So slightly more favoring Isis in this one than versus Thor, but they're sort of similar. It'd be like 58 or something for Loki and 55 for Thor or something like that. Freya, I think is maybe like the god that I prefer the most of the Norse versus Isis, but even then I'm dying to those timing attacks a lot, trying to just hold on. But I do have Draugr, so if there's some silly Anubis full all in from Isis, I can defend that stuff with Draugr. So there's some angles there for Freya. Against Kronos, I prefer Isis. You have the monument, protect the temple, exploit abuse notwithstanding. You can also empower the monument if you know your opponent is an exploit abuser. But yeah, you're not going to lose your temple. You don't have to really worry about whether the Kronos rush is coming or not. There's actually a build order with Isis that I've come up with, which is a 3 minute and 3 minute and 44. It's 18 seconds before 4 minutes. 3 minutes and 44. 16 seconds. 18 seconds. 3 minutes and 42. Yeah. 3 minutes and 42 second advance time with pickaxe, with monument, and with Flood of the Nile if the rush doesn't come. That's how cool it is, right? I don't have to worry. Like if I can grab Flood of the Nile afterwards once the rush doesn't come, or I can get priests out and then I can grab Flood of the Nile much later. So it's a really, really nice build for against Kronos. If he goes for a later advance, we can go for our town center. I prefer Isis in this matchup through and through. Aranos, I like Aranos here. Aranos has just got so many different ways to beat up on Isis with favor, with shockwave, with chaos. Of course, there's the monument protection, but Isis is just sitting there going, what unit do I have to build here against this Aranos player? And you just like, Aranos has just got everything. And also he's got that strangle ability. So while you're trying to kind of sneak out and expand your map like you would versus Kronos and Gaia, Aranos is already there. Aranos has got his eyes on you with his 3 sky passages set up all across the map, oracles everywhere. You try and set up a Migdol somewhere, he's there with the entirety of his army in moments. These sky passages are the big reason why I'm really liking Aranos. And also Shockwave. Gaia, I prefer Isis in this one. Like I said, you can sneak those Migdols up. You can get everything set up, and it's really, really easy for Isis to do that versus Gaia because there's no real way to get across the map super fast. So, anyways, we come over to Fushi. I actually don't mind playing Fushi versus Isis. I think there is a timing that Isis can hit, but I also think that Fushi can defend pretty well. He's got the Great Flood, which can be working even with a monument protection. It can be you can throw it back the other way to send them to give yourself more time and break it all down. You just throw it away from you rather than towards you, which everyone wants to use. You've also got the Najjar, which can be really good to shut down any sort of the scouting early on. You wander in, the Isis players wants to get full vision, Mr. style, right? You can shut that down with Najjar, and any sort of classical fight angle doesn't really work with the lightning weapons, so you have to play for something else as Isis. But I don't mind playing either side of this matchup. New Wire, I prefer playing the Isis and Shenong, and it's mostly just that difference of no Najar to help me out in that classical age. But these are okay. I don't mind them. You've got the Earth Wall sort of defensive idea and just trying to hold on. That's your sort of your best angle versus the Isis with these guys. And if you can hold on, you can win. So if there's a nice map for you, you're good to go. Amaterasu, I think I prefer Isis again, similar to Ra. I don't think I need to go over that again. Against Tsukuyomi, I think this is really close. I don't mind either side. I think they both got super powerful timings. They're really, really strong. Anything that the Tsukuyomi player can do, Isis can sort of defend unless you mess up. And, well, I mean, maybe it's even Isis favored if that's the case, but I think it's very much up to the skill of the player as to whether you defend or whether you win. And also the late gamer of the Tsukuyomi is also quite good in the, well, not quite good. They're kind of similar late game powers where Isis would fall off in the late game. Tsukuyomi would fall off in the late game, but nonetheless. And then Susanoo, I prefer Isis here for the main reason of monument protection. So the big strength of Susanoo is myth unit and god power. I can't use half of my god because you've got monument protection. So if you can kill off the monument and then you can use your god power in an effective way in the time you get to use it there, then of course Susanoo is going to be able to break out and he's going to be in a similar position to what Tsukuyomi is, because then you can actually use your power spikes, right? But killing off those monuments is easier said than done. Ideas of like Shinobi, like with a bit of a run around the back, take it out. Those sort of ideas can work, but I haven't played that matchup enough to feel like I've got the Susanoo down. I've played the Isis side enough to be like, okay, I prefer Isis. Alrighty, let's go into Set, who is sitting at 950, which is going to be in the top of the A tier. Get over here, Set. All right, so if we come over here with versus Norse, he's just beating all the Norse. Similar reasons for Isis, but just better because the barracks units are just better. And barracks units, they're just tough to kill as Norse. I don't have much to talk about. Freya can't sit back versus Set either because Set's going to hit. If you want to play like a really walled off defensive game versus Set, he's just going to hit you with a Thoth timing. I've shown that plenty of times. That this is a tough one for Freya to do, so he has to figure out a different way through. And you can't just rely on the Draugr. Anyways, if we move over to Kronos, I think this one's kind of close. You don't really like the Hyperion angle versus Set is quite difficult to deal with. And the reason is you don't have Petsukos. So Petsukos are the ultimate counter to Satyr, but I don't get those as Set. So I have to figure out a different way through. I do have Nephthys with the Nephthys priests, but yeah, I don't want to be building the other thing, right, in that situation is then I don't want to be building barracks units versus the Satyr. So I'm playing away from what I want to do, which is going into like chariot archers or elephants, camel riders, maybe some axemen. But if I build the axemen out, the Satyrs just kill them without me controlling them really well, which is really tough. So I don't really mind playing Set in the matchup, but I don't mind playing Kronos either. I think this is a close one. I don't think that the Kronos rush is good versus Set either, but yeah, I would mostly expect the Kronos player to be playing a little slower versus a good Set, like doing that fast advance and things like that, and then whatever, you go for a town center if you need to, or you can go for a classical fight, whatever. Uranos, I prefer the Uranos. So this is basically just the same problem as Kronos, except Uranos has got Shockwave and Sky Passages. So yeah, I'll keep coming back to those two main points. If you get max value out of those, then Uranos is just a nightmare to play against. Gaia doesn't have Hyperion, so this makes Set a million times better versus Gaia. In fact, this might push Set up to 955, which does put him into a, I think I got this one wrong. I'm going to change it. Yeah. So versus Gaia, this puts him up into 955, so the bottom of S tier. The reason why is just because no Hyperion. So you can go barracks units, completely fine, happy days. Just to break down the theory, You want basically Atlantean wants to go Rhea versus Migdol focused Egyptian play, and Hyperion versus Barracks focused play. So against the why Rhea? Well, obviously the behemoths can take down the Migdols, but you've got the stronger infantry units to help take out units like the elephant, the camel rider, and you've also got destroyers that can get into the mix there, which have also boosted up to help with the chariot archers, and everything that comes from Rhea is really nice. You can also trade her away other stuff. But against the barracks units, the satyr just kill off all of the barracks units. So, but yeah, Gaia doesn't have that. So a little bit of an edge on set in that matchup, just because that's what he's good at. Now versus Fushi, I don't mind playing Fushi in this matchup at all. He's got that Peach Blossom Spring as well. So any sort of like, oh, you're stuck without gold. No, I've got an extra 1500 gold in my base, you nugget, and that's going to get me to the Mythic Age. Now I'm going to kill off your army with a Great Flood. So you have to find a different angle there to deal with the Fushi, which does make for some very interesting games. Against Noir, she doesn't have that, and I do prefer to play Set in this matchup. Timings hit really well, and I'm good there. Shenong, on the other hand, the difficulty with Shenong is mostly that the myth units that come out being free can be very, very obnoxious to deal with as Set. Yes, I'm going to be building myself priests and things like that, but they're just extra on top of everything else. So that's actually almost enough for him to get to equality. And that's where I think, obviously he's also got the lightning weapons to help him out as well, but the extra myth units, just like the extra Peach Blossom Spring for Fushi, I feel like it's like enough to help out Shenong, and I don't mind playing that matchup as Shenong. Against Amaterasu, similar to the other Egyptians, I think Set is perfectly fine here to play that defensive game with Migdols, Chariot Archers, and things like that, and Amaterasu is going to be having to try and figure out how to break through all of that, which is quite difficult. But it is obviously difficult on the other side for Set to do it, but I prefer to play that side. Tsukiyomi here. I think this one's nice and close. Mostly the reason is Samurai aren't really going to get built by the Tsukiyomi, and Yumi Horse Archers are countered. Unlike the Chariot Archer, the Yumi Horse Archer is countered by the Slinger because of the range of superiority of the Slinger. So you've got Spearman, Slinger, Migdol, and Priest, and you should be good to play a nice game versus the Tsukiyomi. You've also got Shifting Sands to jump on top of the Oyumi if they ever come, and also run away. You've got Nephthys to help deal with any really myth unit shenanigans there too. Or you can go for Sekhmet as well. And we've seen some nice Set play versus Tsukiyomi. And then I think I prefer Set versus Susanoo as well for a similar reason, mostly because the myth units get countered by those priests. And you can just play walls versus Raiju, and you can sort of defend against them fairly simply, I think, just as long as you're aware of how to do it. But yeah, and Oni aren't really an option versus the priests of Nephthys because they're very cheap, and yeah. Alrighty. Though that being said, Susanoo can use that Smiting Gust to get some value, like send the priests flying, kill off the position, and then like kill off the priest as they're trying to walk back with a whole bunch of Naginata riders. So maybe I'm wrong on that one, and Susanoo is perfectly fine in that match. I'm in fact favored. All right, let's jump over to Thor. Thor is sitting in the B tier here, but in the very top end of the B tier. Very, very, very top end of the B tier. He's at 890, so almost an A tier god. There's just that problem with some matchups, but he's better against all the other Norse gods. I think this one is self-explanatory. He just has more economy early on, which means more stuff. He's got the Dwarven Gold Mine, which is just better than all the other Archaic Age god powers, apart from like Gul and Bursty, which doesn't really have any impact in this matchup. You got Frost to completely counter it as well, right? With also countering everything else. So I prefer Thor in all those matchups. I prefer Thor versus Kronos as well. We've seen some Thor players losing really fast, but also other Thor players completely countering. So yeah, you do have to learn a build order. But if you learn the build order and you use that versus Kronos, you don't have to learn another build order. So the thing with Thor is he does, if you want to be a Thor main, you've got You've got a Rush, which is really strong. You've got a anti-Kronos opening, which is really good versus that. You've got the Dwarven Armory opening, 4-minute opening, 4-minute 30 opening. There's a lot of build orders. You have the water build you have to learn. There's a lot of build orders with Thor. So he's definitely a god to spend some time learning. But once you learn all of the builds and you're ready to go, you should have some really nice games versus these gods. I don't mind playing Thor versus Uranus. I don't mind playing Uranus versus Thor. I think it's very close. Mostly it's just like you can go in for berserks, you can go in for you don't really need to go in for the raiding cavalry as Thor, and you can play for Huskal in the classical age, sorry, heroic age, and it feels quite good in that matchup, in my opinion. But also Uranus has got a lot of angles, like Satyr as well versus too many berserks can be tough to deal with. So you do have to be very careful there. Gaia is having a little bit of a trouble versus Thor. I think it's like she's sort of similar to Uranus, but doesn't have that enough power with Shockwave, without Shockwave, and without Sky Passage to kind of keep up with like the speed of the Thor. Well, she does have the Lush, but it's just not the same. Against Fushi, I think Fushi and Shinong are both absolutely dominating Norse. There's not much to talk about. Chiao is just really good versus Norse. That's just how it is. Versus Noir, I think this one's quite close, but every time I've played it, feels like the Noir just gets to her, like, her water dragons, and I struggle. So this might just be skill problems, but I think I prefer to play the Noir side in this one most of the time. And then versus all of the Japanese, I think that Thor is not doing as good. You've basically got Axemen on steroids, which are the big weakness of Norse. Axemen with the samurai. So they've got samurai, they've got Yati Spearmen, which are amazing versus Norse cavalry. You basically can't build not in a different way to the problem with, it's not, how do I put this? Yati Spearman plus Yumi Archer. Yumi Archer kill Throw and Axeman. Yati kill Raiding Cavalry. You don't have a nice comp versus that. You don't have a nice comp versus that. So yeah, then that's going to be something that all the Japanese can do. Plus the samurai come in and they can help as well. So that's the prevalent issue versus all of these gods. There's no like massive cheese here. I don't think that the timing attacks really work. So going for a timing doesn't really work. You just have to play for a nice classical age with the right unit comp to beat the Norse as Japan. You just sort of play a nice game. But anyways, moving along, we're up to Odin, who is our lone sad D tier god. How he has fallen. And now we get to talk about this. So Odin was doing amazingly for a long time at lower elos. He was doing okay in upper elos. And he was doing okay for me. I was happy to play him. I thought he was decent. I thought he was good. I also was beating Odin players, losing to Odin players, and it felt like a really, really nice, strong god for me at the top level. But he was doing really, really well low levels. So effectively he's been neutered to help that lower levels out over the past. And yeah, he's quite tough to play at the higher levels now. That's what's going on there. So yeah, the raiding cavalry feel really bad, so I can't really build them. Which is one thing that he's very good with because of Freya. He wants to go for raiding cavalry. They feel really bad. I don't want to build them. Valkyrie feel really bad as well. And I'm actually feeling like Heimdall in 9 times out of 10 matchups is actually the way to go. So that's crazy. So against Loki, I prefer playing Loki here. He's also got Heimdall to use. And he's got the stronger units. Sure, Odin's got the advantage to rush with. So he can go for the earlier attack on Loki because he's got great hunt. He doesn't have to leave his base, whereas Loki will. But yeah, I prefer playing Loki here. Actually, what am I talking about? I prefer playing Odin. This is probably the only match I prefer playing Odin in. That and Hades, right? So yeah. This I've just lost my mind. We're up to 1 hour and 8 minutes. That's why I've lost my mind. Okay, so why Odin over Loki? So like I said, I do have the rush there. I do have Heimdall, so I'm like, you want to be doing that. The Valkyrie going Freya and like forest firing early on can be an angle as well, but I think Heimdall's the better call. You can you basically want to be going for like Hersa throwing Axeman right off the bat, rather than into the Great Hall, and I think that's your way to go. And you got to use your Ironry on not on autocast, so you have to manually turn that off. It's actually quite easy to do this. People ask for it to be like a default setting, but realistically you just go select all of the type of unit. So I've got that on like shift space or something. I click on my Ironry, I shift space, and then I hit alt Q, and then I can use it manually throughout the fight. And you're basically only using it to reposition your units. So you want to be moving your throwing axemen around and things like that. Yeah, and otherwise it can kind of bug out. Anyways, onwards and upwards against Freya. I like playing Freya here. There is one angle for Odin with Heimdall, where if the Freya player is not aware, you can undermine the Asgardian Bastion and take that out, and then you're good to go. So there's one angle and one angle alone for that. And you can rush the Freya. I would be suggesting to do some sort of Hersa rush, like put a temple on your third town center, prepared to take that, and just go for like an early Hersa attack into the Freya player's base, because the Freya player wants to go hand axe, pickaxe, and all that stuff. So you don't have to get a huge amount of damage to pay for your faster advance, and that really gives you the momentum for the rest of the game. So I'd suggest giving that a go. Odin really sucks versus Kronos. It's not necessarily the Kronos rush, and I do think that you have to be a good Kronos player to actually win this. This isn't like, oh, you just do this one build order and you win. No, it's not that simple. You still have to have a lot of knowledge and know the right ways to play a lot of different situations inside of the Kronos rush. The Odin player will need to advance quickly, will need to get a Hersa out, has some problems versus a lot of stuff after the fact, once the Kronos rush is kind of been well and truly defended. Things like dealing with Catapulti Caraballister is really tough. So if you've got a forward gold mine, you can just lose straight onto that, because we have to take a fight we don't want to there to defend our gold mine. I would recommend going for Heimdall in this matchup as well, so that you can potentially undermine a time-shifted counter barracks. Or if you send your the time-shifted counter barracks would probably be the best bet, and go from that. Go for that sort of angle. And then you've also got the Einherji Horn to send your raiding cavalry at the speed of light in to try and take out those Caraballister. Alrighty, and then against Uranos, I prefer Uranos. I don't know if I have to keep explaining the Uranos thing. I think it's if I just say Sky Passage, Shockwave, and Hyperion, then that is the sort of big reason why Uranos is very good versus all of these Norse gods. I also prefer to play Gaia over Odin here as well. I used to prefer Odin in this matchup, but he's just been nerfed too much. And he can't really find the edge here. Against Fuxi, I've got this as one of the worst matchups in the game for Fuxi and Shenong. Qiyao is incredibly difficult to defend against. The only ideas that I've had is some sort of Heimdall tower defense while getting in town center. So I want to play like a 2 TC game, which is it's so hard. 2 TC game versus a 1 TC player. That's the angle that I want. And then I want to be putting towers down and taking advantage of the towers to try and hold. Well, I know my opponent's got fire archers to take them down anyway. So I still have to be like threatening to push forward and repairing up my towers and having the raiding cavalry, which I don't want to build anyways. But if I can get to like the heroic age and I can get to Huskell, maybe I'm okay. Nuar is a little bit easier because there's no, I can still build my raiding cavalry against Nuar. But Nuar does have Qiyao, which is another big, not Qiyao, Zhen Nu, which is another big problem with the, what are they called? The Chillin, which are very, very strong too. Now, same problem with Thor. For the Japanese is the guardhouse units are really good, plus samurai. So I would expect to see those being used and Odin having trouble. And we're going to see something very similar for Loki here. Loki is just a tiny bit above Odin, in my opinion. He's sitting behind our our Poseidon here. So Loki versus Freya can do the Heimdall thing that Odin can do, but less good because you want to be rushing, you want to be trying to do stuff, but you don't have great hunt, so it makes it a little bit tougher. And you also don't have the Freya angle if the map calls for it. Against Kronos, same problem for Loki. He does have a little bit of an easier time against the Kronos rush because he has the cheaper ox carts. So you can get a slightly better early game, but that's just it's not really enough. And then the problem arises with the with gold mine spawns and things like that. If you have a really safe gold mine, then maybe you probably have an interesting game versus Kronos. Do you know what I mean? Like defend the Kronos rush, have a nice safe gold mine, get past it, and you should be okay. Similar to Odin with Uranus and Gaia. I don't see the angles here. I just prefer to play Uranus and Gaia against Loki. That's about it. I don't know how else to explain it other than what I've said already. Fushi, Nuwa, Shenong. Loki doesn't really need to go into Cav, but he does need to go into Cav to some degree. So you have to figure out. Basically, you have to figure out how to get yourself the trolls out to prevent the fire archers from coming forward. And we're just going to be having this positioning of troll, Ursa, fire archer not able to engage against the trolls sitting there. Then the pioneers walk forward and then we step back and we have this like little bit of an exchange of positioning and stuff. But I prefer to play both Fushi and Shenong in this one ever so slightly. Against Nuwa, I think this is actually quite a fun matchup. You got Forseti in this matchup, which is quite strong. Also Heimdall if you know your opponent's a very defensive player, they can go for their Earth Wall and you just undermine it and you can take it out. And then you can play a nice raiding Herser game. But Forseti is a lot more powerful versus Nuwa, I think. And then versus the Japanese, yeah, it's still that Yumi Archer, Yati Spearman, Samurai problem. I don't expect to see Cav getting built versus Norse very often. I wonder if I'm wrong. I might be wrong on that, and we still see Cav versus Norse, but I don't know if it's really necessary. I think you don't really need to go Cav, even with Tsukiyomi. But yeah, those are pretty much going to be Japanese favored, I think. Now we pop over to Freya, who is sitting in my A tier at the same as Zeus. DLC privilege. Okay, so against Kronos, I prefer Freya. So the big point here is you can just use Gul and Bursty to defend. You still want to advance fast. You probably don't need to get your upgrades, but you can just use Gul and Bursty to defend, get yourself your temple back up after it gets deconstructed, and you are simply good to go. And you've also got Draugr to defend the early game as well, which are really, really good to hold on. And then you're just playing with an advantage versus Kronos as you got the hill fort to come down. You've got Huskal in the classical age, and that can be an easy way to kind of get out of there. It's probably kind of close. I prefer Freya, but I can play. I'll be happily playing the Kronos in this matchup as well. Against Uranus, I think this one's quite close. There's some maps that can be really, really bad for Uranus, but the more I've played it, the more I realize that there's so many weaknesses to be hitting the Freya player with while playing Uranus because of Sky Passage. So if the army is defending a weak spot on the right, then that means there's a spot on the left that I can go and attack. And I'm just going to keep on bashing the Freya until he struggles. And if the Freya does get through, then it's going to be tough for the Uranus. So it's really a skill matchup, in my opinion, as to who can find the wins there. Defender versus aggressor type skill matchup. So anyways, against Gaia, I prefer Freya. There's the Sky Passage angle isn't there. You still have the Oceanus thing, which is still good, but without Sky Passages, I'm going to be stuck in sort of one place, trying to rotate around and attack somewhere else. And if the Freya player is with me, then they're going to be defending everything. So it's like Freya's got that easier time sort of defending in that sort of aggressive defender matchup. But Gaia also has got some really nice late game potential as well, similar to Uranus. So you can angle down that way. Gaia's actually got more favor income than Uranus if you want to go that way. We can go for like a Leto, what's it called? Leto, Thea, Hecate type idea, and then we're angling in for a whole bunch of Lampedes, which can be really, really good to deal with the sort of high costing Huskarl type units and all the other good stuff. Against Fushi, I don't mind playing either side of this matchup. I've played it a lot, and I think you can play really aggressive with Fushi. You've got lightning weapons to counter the Ghoul and Bursty. So now I'm not scared of that Ghoul and Bursty, and we can just play. He's going to click it. He's going to hit you. Make sure you're staying a little bit outside of range so that you don't get sent flying. But once it comes in, drop lightning weapons, kill Ghoul and Bursty, or stun him up, and you can keep fighting, and it's fine. Okay, Noir, I like playing Freya. There's no real problems there. And Shedong, similar reason to Fushi. I like playing this matchup. But it's still just skill matchup for these ones. And against Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi, and Susanoo, I actually don't know here. This is one I've got question marks, but I'm just going to say it 50-50 for the sake of argument. Reason why is Defender, it could be 55 for Freya, but I haven't played it enough. So you just need to play defense here of Freya. You're going to be massing hill forts everywhere. That's the angle against Japan. We just want as many of these hill forts up to slow them down. And even if they're like 10,000 points in front, so long as we've got ourselves our gold coming in, we've got our hill forts up, they can't push us. We're going to get to our late game. We're going to be able to find a win. So that's the angle there. All right, now we're moving into Kronos, who for me is sitting in the C tier, in the same sort of position as Poseidon and above Loki. So this is where things get like very confusing for me, because I feel like, okay, let me roll this out. I feel like the reason we saw so much Kronos and so much Kronos success inside of Champions League was because of the success that the Mr. group was having with Kronos in their practice sessions, and realizing that, oh, once we work this out, it's not so bad. But no one else knows this. So they were like banning and try. Like I remember Mr. was banning Kronos, and I think he was trying to set this up so that he goes, I know how to defend against Kronos. So I want my opponent to be picking that one away, giving me a free win in this tournament. That's my opinion, because I just don't see it. Like, of course, Kronos, if you're not prepared, he's going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. But as soon as you're prepared, which pro players should be, I just don't see it. I just don't. And he's not a god that I'm rolling him being like, do you know what I mean? That's where I'm at. But versus Uranus, we've done a whole bunch of other matchups already. Versus Uranus just wins. There's no angle there for the Kronos rush. In fact, you probably want to advance at 3 minutes here as Uranus either way, as there's like, even if the Kronos player goes for a later advance, you've just got the edge. As Gaia, there's again no real edge there. The Gaia Forest to protect the gold mine. You've got hero oracles to kind of help defend you. You've got Caladria to come through and heal everything up, and then you're just playing with Gaia Lush as the defender, and like, what do you do with Kronos there? Against Fushi, Noir, and Shenong, these guys just need to, well, Noir doesn't really need to care. You've got the Kwafu chieftain to defend against the early myth units running into your base, but still you want to advance relatively quickly here, and then you're just good to go. There is an angle of automatons for Kronos, which is not really a part of the Kronos rush. You can go for a Kronos rush and then hit with the automatons, but if you lose those two, then you're losing some power spike a little bit later. So you're kind of like banking on your opponent misplaying, and you're getting more value than you should out of that sort of attack. But nonetheless, that's my take there. I would prefer to play the Chinese in this matchup every single time. And then as the Japanese, I've heard a lot of players saying that Kronos beats Japan. with the Kronos Rush, and I just go, dude, you just build Mikor. Like, I don't understand. It doesn't, you can't do any damage with the Kronos Rush. You just heal it off. It doesn't do anything. You can Alt S the villager and just out heal the damage of a Terma. The early Promethean or automatons die to 3 Mikor. You don't need, like you heal up the one that's getting attacked and you whack back and you just win. Like, I don't understand it. It's my brain is, anyways. And then they'll come in with their Terma spam and you're just like, well, okay, well, I'll just either drop Swampland onto it and then they all die, or I make myself out a couple of Naginata riders and then I'm going to heal them up with more Mikor. And then you never kill them and then your Terma die. Okay, that's my rant over there. I prefer to play Japan in every single one of these matchups against Kronos. All right, and now we're up to Uranos, of who is my pick for the best god in the game right now. I prefer this god. I don't think he's got a bad matchup at the moment. I think there's some like very competitive matchups and maybe some maps that he's not very good on. But man, if you're picking this god, you're gonna have a lot of fun with him, I think. Against Gaia, he has the edge with Shockwave. He has the edge with a Prometheus build as well. Like if you're like, well, Gaia's got more economy. That means I can just play a defensive game and I'm gonna be able to come out on top. I go Prometheus here and I go for my economic route. Now you have to go Oceanus and try and find that edge with the Caladria to heal it all up and find the edge there because I've got more economy than you. Of course, you've got the angle of having the Murmillo that are really strong as well, but we don't really see that as a thing. It's mostly like the Terma coming through and being a menace for the majority of the matchup. And then after that, and maybe the Murmillos come through. But yeah, I prefer Uranus here. Against Fushi, Nuwa, and Shenong, I prefer Uranus as well for reasons of the Chinese are going to be playing more of the defensive game, and I get map control, and I get to put sky passages everywhere, and now you have to somehow get out. I did see a couple of games here of Uranus versus China where the Uranus player was so far in front, took a really silly all-in fight underneath a ballet, and also sometimes against forest protection as well, thinking they needed to end the game there, where really you just need to play for gold mines. If you give one gold mine over to the Chinese, it's not the end of the world. You can actually take the rest of the map and win with mass, with like a lot of palaces, and just be playing defense on every other gold mine on the map. So yeah, I think I prefer Uranus in these matchups. And then Amaterasu, Tsukiyomi, and Susanoo. I think that Uranus is going to be a little bit better than Amaterasu. I prefer him against Amaterasu, partly because of the Caladria and Karabalista sort of shutting down any sort of samurai ideas with the help of sky passages as well. But also just Amaterasu is a defensive god, and defensive gods suck versus Uranus because you give the map control over to him and he can just take it and just find the wins there. Tsukiyomi and Susanoo, I think is actually really interesting. So these guys have both got these power spikes of which Uranus can't defend, but Uranus doesn't need to defend them. He just has to run away, and he can with the sky passage. So long as you've got enough positions to run to, you're good. And I'll even sack town center. I don't care. As long as I don't lose my villages and I can just wait out this power spike to get to full bronze or to get to the heroes I need to deal with the myth units, then we're good to go. But I definitely think this is more of the skill matchup type thing. And some really, really good Tsukiyomi players will be able to win some really, really good Uranus players and vice versa. Alrighty. Over here we've got Gaia, who is floating in just below Thor here in front of Ra. So yeah, I don't mind Gaia versus the China. I think it's very close. I don't see any super massive advantages or disadvantages, except for maybe like the Destroyer seems like a really difficult unit to deal with as China. Because they don't have, but they do have Gao and they do have Myth unit. So there's some angles there. So yeah, but I think this is really close, and it's mostly just a skill matchup at the moment. It used to be very difficult for Atlanteans because they didn't have the economy to compete. But after the nerfs to China, now the economy is quite competitive. So it becomes a competitive matchup, funnily enough. And then we've got ourselves versus Amaterasu. Similar reason for like Uranus doing well versus Amaterasu. The Caladria are the key here, because it allows you to do a whole bunch of stuff. And you've got Gaia Lush, which allows your Karabalis to have a lot more edge. So I do prefer Gaia here, though Amaterasu is very much possible to win against Gaia. It's very much a winnable matchup. Tsukiyomi and Susanoo, I don't know if Gaia can hold those timings I was talking about, as she doesn't have the Sky Passage to sort of run from them. So that's why I prefer Tsukiyomi and Susanoo in that matchup. Okay, it's very simple. We're almost done. We've got Fushi now, who is sitting in my S tier. Just at the bottom of the S tier, just one little tick above Set. He is bidding up on the Chinese because of the Peach Blossom Spring. That's the main reason. So he gets a big boost of resources when he needs it. Noir also has something similar to this with the Clay Peasants, but it's not as, I don't think it's as much, right? Like if I put 8 villages onto my Peach Blossom Spring, that's like me getting an extra 8 villages in. Plus, those resources are like available in my main base, so I don't have to walk to it. You can do the similar thing with a Heroic Age Clay Peasants and get 8 villages in, but for whatever reason, it doesn't feel like Noir can keep up with that big spike. But I think people are using the Clay Peasants to get a town center. And maybe that's the mistake there. And maybe this matchup becomes very equal. Or maybe even Noir favored if you save the Clay Peasants for the Heroic Age and play for the Heroic Age nice and quick. So you get that down nice and quick and get that big boost of resources from that one. But nonetheless, that's why I think the Fuji is winning this. It's just a timing thing. He's going to be able to battle you over. And then against Amaterasu, the fact of the matter is there's not a great counter to lightning weapons for Amaterasu, whereas Tsukiyomi and Susanoo have both got Swampland, which is a great counter to lightning weapons. So yeah, I think that Amaterasu I prefer to play China, and Tsukiyomi and Susanoo I prefer to play Japan. Now we come over to Noir, who is sitting just below Thor. And I think it's an equal matchup for Noir versus Shenong. There's no super big advantages or disadvantages. The Clay Peasants is sort of counteracted by free myth units and the farms as well. So I don't really know. I think Shenong might win the late game, which probably might give a little edge over to Shenong, but the Noir raids are really tough to defend with the immobile army. So it's a bit of a skill matchup and seeing who can sort of stop what their opponent is doing the best. And then I think this Amaterasu versus Noir matchup is very, very close. I don't really see an edge either way. Actually, yes, no, that's why. So for Noir against Amaterasu, because you got that Earth Wall, the Suicide Weasels aren't really a thing. And then on top of that, you just got ballet spam. So now we're like, how do I win with Amaterasu? I don't see the angle there. So I think I prefer to play Noir and just go for that angle. But Amaterasu is like very competitive here as well. So you can find the wins. Whereas Tsukiyomi and Susanoo, their timings are really strong versus their Heroic Age timings are really strong versus China in general. So defending those is the tough part. So if you can defend those, then you're going to be okay. But if you can't, then well, life is tough. So good luck. Okay, now we're up to Shenong, who is sitting up just behind Set, in front of Zeus. Yeah, in front of Zeus. Okay, so we've got only a couple more matchups to go. Yay! So Shenong here. Where are you? Shenong is winning out against Amaterasu, partly because of that lightning weapons not having a great answer to it inside of Amaterasu. Plus, there's also the farms, which can play around the invisible farms can play around the Kamikaze Itachi. And you've got, if you want to go the other angle, which is similar to what Noir can go for, you can go for the Earth Wall and a lot of ballets to just play defense. And that works too. Tsukiyomi and Susanoo have still got those Heroic Age timings, which will hit Shenong incredibly hard. And they're tough to defend against, I think. Especially because there's also that Swampland, which counters the lightning weapons nicely. Or at least gives it a nice fight for you. Okay, now we go to Amaterasu. there's really not much left here. So you guys probably be figuring out based on what I've said already where these guys are sitting. But Amaterasu is floating just below Ra for me at the moment. So actually quite low on the tier list. But like I said, it's still a very, very close. Oh, most of these are just like slightly favored, but skill is going to prevail every single time. So Tsukiyomi and Susanoo are stronger than Amaterasu. It's just as simple as that. They're just the power that you get. The power spikes are just bigger, stronger, and you just need to go for them. Amaterasu is going to be one he's sitting in the classical age for basically the entirety of the game, trying to make use of samurai. But you're going to get hit with Tengu, you're going to get hit with Oni, you're going to get hit with Swampland after Swampland, and life is, and Raiju are going to come in, and life is going to be very, very tough for that Amaterasu, I would say. And then now Tsukiyomi is sitting in the S tier here, sort of equal to Isis in this top end here. And I actually think that this matchup here between Tsukiyomi and Susanoo is really close. I played it once or twice, and it feels like the Tsukiyomi has got the edge, but then your power spike hits, and you're like, actually, no, I'm way in front here. So Tsukiyomi's power spike hits a little bit earlier than yours is Susanoo, but as long as you don't completely botch it and you're still going, then you can push back and you can find the big advantages with either Raiju or Oni, and that, or a whole bunch of god powers with Den drums. So those are your options there, and that will leave Susanoo sitting just behind Set here. And I think, given that this is the way that it looks with this many S tiers, I might just split this up ever so slightly, and we're going to move all of these gods down into A tier, and we're going to leave it like this. So that's what we're going to go with. Like the difference between say Set and Susanoo is 5, whereas between like between like Fushi and Tsukiyomi is like 20 plus, which seems like a lot for the very top end. So yeah, there's just these are my picks for the best gods in the game. This is my tier list. It's been a long one. I hope you guys enjoy. If you've got any comments, complaints, or thoughts about how terrible my tier list is, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you guys in the next one.